He stands in the middle of the living room, the afternoon sun cutting harsh lines across the dust motes dancing in the air. His face is a mask I don't recognize, contorted, furious. The words hit me like physical blows, sharp and sudden. "You think I don't know?" he spits, his voice low and vibrating with contained rage. "You think I'm stupid? I know what you've been doing." My blood runs cold. Doing what? My mind races, flipping through the mundane hours, the quiet days, the endless routine. What could he possibly mean? He takes a step closer, his eyes fixed on mine, burning with accusation. "Don't play dumb," he snarls. "It's pathetic. The lies. The sneaking around. Who is he? Tell me his name." My breath catches in my throat. Cheating? Me? The sheer, preposterous absurdity of it stuns me into silence. My hands tremble, not from guilt, but from the shock, the sudden, violent shift in the air, the feeling of standing on solid ground 1 second and falling into an abyss the next. He thinks I'm cheating. He's convinced of it. And in that moment, looking at his face, I know reasoning won't touch this. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is something else entirely. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. Our life before this moment, it wasn't a fairy tale, not by a long shot, but it was ours. It was built brick by brick, compromise by compromise. Mark and I had carved out a space together, quiet and predictable. We had our routines, morning coffee side by side, evenings spent on the couch watching whatever streaming service dictated, weekends that often blurred into necessary chores and occasional, hesitant social obligations. We weren't young and reckless anymore. We were settled, anchored. My desires were simple. Security. A comfortable predictability. Maybe, just maybe, the quiet warmth of growing old with someone who saw you, truly saw you. We had talked about the future, about maybe kids someday, about fixing up the old house, about retirement plans that felt impossibly distant but reassuringly solid. I felt safe. Like I had found my harbor after drifting for so long. Mark was stable. He worked hard. He was dependable. Or so I thought. There were small things, looking back. Moments I brushed off. His phone was always face down. He was suddenly possessive of his laptop. Late nights at work became more frequent. Nothing concrete, nothing that screamed affair, not to me. I attributed it to stress, to the pressures of his job, to the general weariness of being in a long-term relationship. We had our squabbles, our cold silences, but who didn't? It was just life. Normal. Boring even sometimes. And I was okay with boring. Boring felt safe. The accusation itself felt like a physical blow. Not just the words, but the venom behind them. He didn't ask. He declared. He stood there, vibrating with righteous indignation, presenting his baseless fantasy as undeniable truth. It felt surreal. Like I had woken up in someone else's nightmare. He didn't have proof, not real proof. Just twisted interpretations. A late text from a friend asking about a project. Who are you talking to? Why are you hiding your screen? A casual coffee with a female colleague. You are dressed up. Who are you meeting? My need for an hour alone after a stressful day. Where did you go? Why won't you tell me? Everything I did, every ordinary moment, was filtered through a sudden, dark suspicion. I remember standing there, the sunlight feeling suddenly cold on my skin, the air thick with his hostility. I tried to speak, to explain, to simply say, "That's insane," but the words wouldn't come. My mind was reeling, trying to grasp the sheer scale of this delusion. How could he possibly believe this? Where was it coming from? The days that followed were a blur of frantic, desperate attempts to defend myself. I opened my phone, offered him access to my messages, my call logs. "Look," I pleaded, "there's nothing. See? It's just normal life." He wouldn't look. Or if he did, he'd scan it with narrowed eyes, looking for hidden meanings, for names he didn't recognize, twisting innocent interactions into damning evidence. I showed him my calendar, the mundane appointments, the work deadlines. I recounted my hours away from the house, explaining every minute detail. I was at the grocery store. Here's the receipt. I was at the gym. Here's the check-in record. I was visiting my mother. Call her, she'll tell you. Each explanation, each piece of evidence I offered, was met with cynical dismissal. You planned it, he'd sneer. You're covering your tracks. Of course, you'd have an alibi ready. It was like arguing with a wall built of his own paranoia and projection. The more I tried to prove my innocence, the guiltier he seemed determined to make me. The house, once our shared haven, became a cage. The air was perpetually thick with tension, silent accusations hanging in every room. I felt watched, judged, constantly under suspicion. He started checking my mileage, asking pointed questions about my whereabouts the moment I walked through the door. My friends noticed. Calls became strained. Dinners felt awkward. I started making excuses, withdrawing. It was easier than trying to explain the suffocating atmosphere I was living in. The isolation deepened. My voice, raised in frustrated defense, bounced off his unyielding certainty. My tears, born of hurt and helplessness, only seemed to fuel his conviction that I was a manipulative liar trying to wriggle out of being caught. He twisted everything. My calmness was proof I was a master deceiver. My frustration was proof I was guilty and lashing out. There was no winning, no way to break through the barrier of his belief. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My mind raced constantly, replaying conversations, searching for a trigger, a reason, anything that could explain this sudden, vicious turn. Was he having a breakdown? Was this some bizarre test? Was I going crazy? The gaslighting was relentless, chipping away at my sense of reality, my self-worth. I started doubting myself, wondering if I had unconsciously done something, if there was some truth to his accusations I couldn't see. That's what the constant barrage does to you. It makes you question your own sanity. He didn't just keep the accusations within the house. Not directly. He was more insidious. He started dropping hints to mutual friends. Little comments about how stressed he was, how he didn't know who he could trust, how some people weren't who they seemed. Nothing explicit, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. To make me feel like everyone was starting to look at me differently. Like my reputation was being quietly poisoned, drop by drop. The emotional toll was immense. My work suffered. I couldn't focus. My energy was consumed by the constant, draining conflict at home. I lost weight. I jumped at shadows. Every time the front door opened, my heart seized. Every time his phone rang, I braced myself for the next wave of accusations. I was living in a perpetual state of fight or flight, but there was nowhere to run, and nothing to fight that could be won with logic or truth. I remember one particularly brutal argument. It was late. The house was dark, save for the harsh kitchen light. He was pacing, his accusations escalating, becoming wilder, more detailed, clearly pulled from his own disturbed imagination. I had tried one last time to reason. I laid out my points calmly, logically. I showed him irrefutable proof of where I had been. He just laughed. A cold, harsh sound that scraped against my soul. "You think that proves anything?" he sneered. "You're good. I'll give you that. But you're not good enough." Something snapped in me in that moment. Not in a dramatic, standing up for myself way. More like a thread finally breaking. I stopped trying to convince him. I stopped defending. I just looked at him. Really looked at the stranger standing in my kitchen, spitting venom he truly believed. And a new thought, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of my despair. What if this wasn't about me at all? What if his accusations weren't born of a paranoid delusion about my actions, but a desperate need to distract from his own? What if he wasn't just wrong, but actively malicious? That night, the sleepless hours weren't spent dissecting my own behavior, but his. I started noticing the inconsistencies in his stories. The late nights that didn't add up with his colleagues' social media posts. The sudden insistence on privacy with his phone, a change from years of openness. The unexplained expenses on the joint account he'd suddenly become secretive about. The midpoint shift was quiet, internal. I stopped seeing myself as the accused needing to prove innocence and started seeing myself as a detective. His accusations became clues, pointing not to my infidelity, but to his deception. The energy that had been spent on defending myself redirected itself into a quiet, calculated investigation. The fear remained, but it was now tinged with a growing, cold determination. I wasn't just fighting for my reputation anymore. I was fighting for the truth, whatever it was, and for my own sanity in the face of his relentless lies. The investigation was terrifying. It felt like walking through a minefield in the dark. I learned to be stealthy, to check things when he was asleep or out of the house. My heart hammered in my chest every time I picked up his phone. Every time I opened a drawer, he usually kept locked. I found fragments first. Suspicious texts from a contact saved under a generic name. Receipts for restaurants and hotels I'd never been to, dated during his late nights at work. A second burner phone I discovered hidden in his car's glove compartment. It was like peeling back layers of carefully constructed lies. Each discovery was a fresh wave of nausea, confirming the sickening realization that this man I had built my life with was living a double life and using my character as a shield, a convenient scapegoat. The crisis deepened because the more I found, the more trapped I felt. I had proof of something, proof of his deceit, but not of his motive for accusing me. And confronting him with what I had felt impossible. He had already demonstrated his ability to twist reality, to deny the undeniable. I could show him the burner phone, and he'd probably accuse me of planting it. I could show him the receipts, and he'd conjure some elaborate, false explanation. His gaslighting would intensify, and my situation would become even more precarious. I was afraid of his reaction, afraid of the potential for escalation, afraid of losing everything. Not just the marriage, which felt already lost, but my home, my financial stability, my peace of mind. He sensed the shift in me, I think. My silence was no longer the silence of despair, but of watchful waiting. My attempts to engage him in conversation about his accusations stopped completely. I became quiet, observant. This seemed to unnerve him more than my previous defenses. He doubled down on his behavior, becoming more erratic, more demanding, more openly hostile. He started talking about separation, about dividing assets, all while still framing it around my supposed betrayal. It was clear he was trying to build his case, to position himself as the wronged party before anything came out. All seemed lost. I had the pieces, but no way to assemble them into something that would shatter his narrative without him destroying me in the process. I was stuck, holding a handful of dangerous truths with nowhere safe to land. The fear was a constant companion now, a cold knot in my stomach. I went through the motions of daily life, but inside, I was screaming, trapped in a nightmare of his making. The weight of his lies, the injustice of his accusations, and the terrifying uncertainty of my future threatened to crush me completely. I felt utterly alone, facing an opponent who had seemingly unlimited capacity for deception and manipulation. Then the phone rang. It was late afternoon. I was sitting alone in the quiet living room, the house feeling vast and empty. The sound startled me. An unknown number. My first instinct was to ignore it. My second was a morbid curiosity. I hesitated, the phone buzzing in my hand. A lifeline or a trap? Taking a deep breath, I answered. Hello. My voice was quiet, hesitant. Silence for a moment, then a shaky breath, a sob. The voice on the other end was female, tearful. Is this my name? My blood ran cold. Who is this? Yes, I said, my heart pounding. Another sob. Oh God. I don't know if I should be calling you. He'll kill me. Who is this? I asked, my voice a little stronger now, laced with apprehension. It's Sarah. Marks, she trailed off, another sob racking her. His girlfriend. My world tilted. Sarah. I had seen her name on some of those suspicious texts saved under a man's name. His girlfriend. The Mistress. Calling me. Crying. He told me. He told me you were cheating on him, she whispered, her voice raw with misery. That's why he was with me. He said you were cold, distant, seeing someone else. I closed my eyes, a wave of nausea washing over me. The sheer, audacious cruelty of it. He was using my fabricated infidelity to justify his real one. He broke up with me last night, she continued, her voice trembling. Just like that. Said it was too complicated, that you were making things difficult. He just discarded me. Her pain was palpable, leaking through the phone line. But then I found some things. Messages on an old email account of his. Things he said about you. About me. About his plan. My grip tightened on the phone. Plan. He was planning this, she choked out. He was planning to leave you, to use your cheating as the reason. He was setting you up. Making it look like you were pulling away, so when he left, everyone would think it was because he was the wrong party. He even talked about making sure you didn't get much in the divorce. Because of your behavior. The knot in my stomach twisted violently. This wasn't just infidelity and paranoia. This was calculated, malicious intent. He wasn't crazy. He was cruel. He was building a narrative, a false reality, not just to escape the marriage, but to destroy me on his way out. I feel so sick, Sarah wept. He lied about everything. About you. About us. He said you were a terrible person, that you drove him to do this. And I believed him. What? What did you find? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Emails, she said. Between him and someone he hired. A private investigator, maybe? Or just someone helping him build a case. They were talking about tracking your movements, creating a timeline, finding ways to make it look like you were being secretive. Things he told me were proof you were seeing someone else. It all clicked into place. The vague accusations, the twisted interpretations of my normal life, the seeds of doubt planted with friends. He wasn't delusional. He was deliberate. He was constructing the cage around me, piece by piece, before slamming the door shut and claiming I had flown out on my own. He was getting ready to do it, she said, her voice firming slightly, the tears still there but anger starting to seep in. He was going to confront you officially this week. File for divorce based on your infidelity. He said it would be easy, because he had proof. Proof he manufactured. Proof he was building with the help of someone. Sarah's voice was trembling again. I recorded some of our conversations. About you. About his plans. He said some awful things. About how he was going to make sure you paid. I have them. And the emails. He forgot to delete them from his drafts. Silence. The world outside felt distant. The afternoon sun still streamed in, but it felt colder now, illuminating the dust motes that seemed to hang heavy with the weight of this revelation. Sarah, the woman he had been having an affair with, the woman he had also lied to and discarded, was offering me the keys to his undoing. She wasn't doing it for me. She was doing it out of her own pain, her own anger at being used, her own twisted sense of guilt. I can send them to you, she whispered. Everything. The recordings, the emails. I can't let him get away with this. Not to you. Not after. Not after what he did to me. This was it. The turning point. The moment where the path diverged. I could continue to be the accused, drowning in his lies, or I could use the weapon that had just been handed to me by the most unexpected source. Fear warred with a sudden, potent surge of adrenaline, of cold, hard resolve. He had tried to trap me, to bury me under his false narrative. But in doing so, he had exposed himself to someone else he had wronged, and that person was now offering me the shovel I needed to dig my way out and bury him under the weight of his own truth. My voice was steady when I finally spoke. Send everything, I said. Don't hesitate. Send it all. The next few hours were a blur. Sarah, true to her word, sent a torrent of files. Emails, audio recordings, screenshots of messages. I devoured them, each one a confirmation of his meticulous, cruel plan. His casual cruelty, his blatant lies, his utter disregard for my life and feelings laid bare in his own words. The private investigator, wasn't an investigator, but a shady contact he had used to dig up dirt or create fake situations. The proof was manufactured timelines, twisted interpretations of my innocent activities, things he had coached Sarah to ask him so he could record himself giving answers that fit his narrative. He had been weaving a web of deceit around me for months, perhaps longer. He came home that evening, his usual posture of simmering resentment in place. He probably planned to initiate the final stage of his plan soon, based on what Sarah had said. He looked at me, his eyes cold and assessing, likely wondering if I had crumbled completely yet. I didn't flinch. The fear was still there, a low hum beneath my skin, but it was overlaid with a chilling calm, a focus I hadn't known I possessed. I knew he was expecting tears, denial, another desperate plea for him to believe me. I gave him none of that. I waited until after dinner. The air was thick with unspoken accusations from his side and quiet preparation from mine. We were sitting in the living room, the same room where this whole nightmare had begun with his initial outburst. "Mark," I said, my voice level, devoid of emotion. "We need to talk." He leaned back, a smug look starting to form on his face. "Here it comes," I could almost hear him thinking. Another round of her pathetic defenses. Oh? Decided to finally come clean? I didn't react to the provocation. I simply held up my phone. On the screen was an email, open and visible. An email from him, sent to his contact, detailing his plan to track my movements and gather evidence. His smug expression faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of surprise. "What is that?" he asked, his voice losing some of its false confidence. "Just something I found," I said, my eyes locked on his. "Interesting read." He stood up, a nervous energy starting to radiate from him. "Where did you get that? You've been snooping?" His voice was rising, shifting from smugness to defensiveness. "I've learned a lot lately, Mark," I said, my voice still calm, dangerously calm. "About lies. About betrayal. About plans." I scrolled through the emails on my phone, showing him more. Messages detailing payments made, instructions given, confirmations received. His face was paling. The surprise was turning to fear. His breath was coming faster. Who gave you these?" he stammered. His eyes darted around the room, searching for an enemy, a leak he couldn't comprehend. He was starting to sweat. I paused for a beat, letting the tension coil in the air. This was the moment. The absolute peak of his carefully constructed reality, about to come crashing down. "Funny thing happened today," I said, a hint of dry humor finally entering my voice, cold and sharp. "Someone called me. Someone you know very well." His eyes widened, panic flashing across them. He didn't speak. He couldn't. He was frozen, his mind racing, trying to figure out which of his many lies was about to explode in his face. "She was crying," I continued, my voice soft but carrying the weight of every insult, every lie, every tear he had caused. "Turns out, you lied to her too. Just like you lied to me. You told her I was cheating. You told me she didn't exist. You told her you loved her. You told me you loved me." His face was ashen. He knew. He knew exactly who had called. His eyes were wide, staring at me not with anger anymore, but with utter, complete shock, mixed with a dawning, horrifying realization. His mistress. His discarded mistress. The one he thought was gone, out of the picture, heartbroken and silent. She had just called his wife. "She sent me everything, Mark," I said, the calmness never breaking. "The emails where you planned all of this. The recordings where you talked about setting me up, about making sure I was ruined. Everything." I held up the phone again, the screen displaying one of the audio file names. "Want to hear it?" I asked, my voice like ice. "Want to hear your own voice, laying out your brilliant plan?" That's when he screamed. It wasn't a scream of pain, or sadness, or even pure rage. It was a guttural sound of a man's carefully constructed world collapsing around him. A sound of pure, blind-sided terror and disbelief. He screamed her name, Sarah's name, not mine. He screamed the name of the woman he had used and discarded, the one he never imagined would turn on him, the one who had just delivered the fatal blow to his entire scheme. He wasn't screaming because he was caught having an affair. He was screaming because his plan to destroy me had been utterly, spectacularly ruined by the very person he had been cheating with. The irony was brutal, perfect. He had built his castle of lies on a foundation of deceit towards both of us, and the connection between his two victims, forged in shared betrayal, had just brought it all down. He stumbled back, eyes wild, pointing at the phone at me. You did this, he shrieked, completely missing the point, still trying to twist reality, still trying to make me the villain. You talked to her? You planned this? No, Mark, I said, the calm finally giving way to a quiet, chilling finality. You did this. You planned all of it, and you got caught. He didn't have a response. He just stood there, vibrating with impotent rage and shock, his face a mask of disbelief. The man who had spent months trying to convince me I was a liar, a cheater, a terrible person, was exposed not by my defense, but by the very evidence of his own deceit, delivered by his own accomplice-turned-witness. His screaming faded into choked, gasping sounds. His accusations died in his throat. The aftermath wasn't loud or dramatic, not after that initial scream. It was quiet, hollow. He eventually sank onto the couch, head in his hands, defeated not by me, but by the unforeseen consequences of his own cruelty. I didn't feel triumphant, just empty and tired. So incredibly tired. I didn't say another word to him that night about his accusations, about Sarah, about the emails, about anything. There was nothing left to say. The truth, raw and undeniable, lay between us, heavier than any lie.
He packed a bag.
Just the essentials. My hands didn't shake anymore. I moved with a quiet purpose, the silence of the house now feeling like a fragile piece after the storm. He didn't look up as I walked past him on the couch. He just sat there, a broken man in a broken house, surrounded by the ruins of his own making. Leaving felt like walking out of a prison I hadn't realized I was in until the door clicked shut behind me. There was no looking back. The air outside felt fresh, clean. Cold but clean. The legal proceedings were swift, thankfully aided by the undeniable evidence Sarah had provided. His attempts to maintain his false narrative in court crumbled under the weight of his own recorded words and emails. He was exposed, humiliated. He lost more than he ever intended me to lose. Not just assets, but reputation, dignity, the carefully crafted image he had presented to the world. The man who had tried to brand me a cheater was revealed as a calculated deceiver and adulterer. There's no real winning in situations like this. The damage is done. The trust is shattered. The time, the energy, the emotional cost. You can't get that back. But there is a profound sense of vindication, of knowing that the truth, however painful, eventually surfaced. That his cruel, calculated plan didn't just fail, but blew up in his face in the most ironic way possible. Sarah and we don't speak regularly, but we exchanged messages for a while. Two women wronged by the same man, finding a strange, unexpected solidarity in the aftermath. She got therapy. I got therapy. We were both collateral damage in his game, but we both survived. My life now is quieter, simpler. There's a lingering sadness, a scar left by the deception. It's hard to trust completely again, but there's also a new kind of strength. I learned that sometimes the person trying to bury you is digging their own grave, and all you have to do is survive long enough for them to fall in. I learned that the truth has a way of finding its way out, often in the most unexpected, inconvenient ways for those who try to hide it. And I learned that sometimes the loudest screams come from those who are finally silenced by the truth they tried so desperately to bury. It's a strange kind of freedom, like emerging from a long, dark tunnel into sunlight that's maybe a little too bright, a little too cold. But it's real. And it's mine. And that feels like everything. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.